Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the world. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Everyone's a special guest because they take time to join me on my show. I'm joined by Chris Fitzpatrick. Now, we have not met in person.
No, which is shocking to me.
Yeah, but we've been connected for at least, I think, going on 5 years, it seems. Like during the pandemic. Right. Pandemic friends. I'd say right. COVID cousins. And we met through association, Eastern Ace, but we even haven't gone to a conference together. But we have motivated each other through the love of public speaking and getting in front of people and mentorship, which we could, touch a little bit upon.
Sure.
But Chris, please introduce yourself to listeners, and we'll have a great conversation about a variety of topics today.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. Appreciate it. So I'm Chris Fitzpatrick, professional speaker, aspiring game show host, below average charity golfer. And as Phil said, I've known him for about 5 years through an organization that I was affiliated with going back probably about 18 years ago to begin with, which is the Eastern Association of Colleges and Employers. I had worked closely with them with a prior employer. And Phil and I connected through some mutual friends and connections that we had with that organization, even though I haven't been as active as I'd like to in the last few years with them. So, but yeah, the COVID cousins thing is awesome, man, because I remember when we had first connected, we realized that the Venn diagram of our interests together was really two circles almost on top of each other. There were a bunch of different things that we've had, like, between public speaking, the topic of mentorship, higher education. We're both into fitness and health. There were so many things that we learned about each other in the first month, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is the guy I got to work with. And then you set up that awesome LinkedIn support group where we had a small community of folks who were commenting on, liking, and interacting with each other's LinkedIn posts. And I thought that was such a brilliant thing to do at a time when we couldn't really get together in person. It was a wonderful idea that you had.
Yeah. And, I think that, building communities is something that's really important to me. And I know that's something that's really important to you. But let's, talk about the one thing that we share is, I love it. You said aspiring game host. I'll copy that too. But we like we like public speaking. And so I'd like to hear a little bit about your origin story. Were you always a confident speaker? Were you always that kid that talked too much in class? Take us to the origin story of you presenting yourself in front of others that are more than one person, right? Public speaking.
Yep. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So to answer kind of the question that you embedded in there, yes, I've always been comfortable speaking in front of people. Yes, I was the kid who wouldn't shut up. That origin story is it runs deep. And what's also really interesting is that the more I tell this origin story and the more I discuss this with other speakers, other people who are passionate about delivering their messages, the more and more I realize how many folks get started with that because they had a childhood experience with worship, right? With some sort of a religious experience, church or what have you. And so my father is a very good public orator. And we would go to church as a family, and he was in a lot of different roles that put him in a position where he was addressing the group, the congregation, and everybody. And so I emulated him in many ways, and I always felt comfortable, whether it was being in a play and being a lead role, to speaking from the lectern. I got into that in school. I got to college. I attended Montclair State University in Montclair, New Jersey. I have a lot of ties to the city of Montclair right now. We'll talk more about that later. But I ended up going into student government, and I became student government vice president, student government president. So then there I was, 19, 20, 21 years old, and I'm delivering addresses at commencement at the time at the IZOD Center, or the Continental Airlines Arena, whatever it was called at the time, for 8, 9, 10,000 people. And they still invite me back to do it as an alumnus, which is really cool. So now it's like 15, 16, 17,000 people. And it's one of my favorite days of the year. I ended up in campus recruiting, which is something else that you and I are very passionate about, right? Your work with George Mason, and then I've been recruiting college students for internships and jobs for almost 20 years. I've interviewed somewhere between 40 and 70,000 job seekers. That's an estimate based off of just the numbers
Yeah.
and the experiences I've had. And so I was speaking in front of groups and I was delivering presentations, and it was just part of my job. And then a conference reached out to me in 2018. They reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, "Do you want to come and deliver a session for our conference attendees?" And they flew me out to Nashville, Tennessee, which was such a cool city. And I delivered my first paid speaking gig.
Okay.
And then 3 years ago, I decided this was something I could seriously lean into. I finished my master's degree during COVID. And then the next step was I started kind of building a business off to the side, and here I am, and I still love doing it. It's I have a full-time job, and I do a lot with my family, but the speaking thing is something that's grown, and I've really enjoyed it.
I love that, and I love the story, about like who childhood, who shaped it. Like, because you think about, I was like, dang, I think about who were my influences in seeing people speak in front of people, and I think it was my dad too, in the
Mm.
military.
Oh
Being an
wow.
army colonel and speaking in front of a lot of people. I was like, oh, my dad did that, so I think about that. And then church, my dad was a reader, at church,
My
in
dad, my
Catholic
dad and
church.
I were too, and
Yeah,
and
and
I
so
have
I
like
did it a
fond
couple of times
memories.
too. So
Yeah.
it's all about see it and believe it, see it and achieve it. And so for me, when I was growing up, thinking of I got to speak in front of people. Yes, I get nervous, but also at the same time, like my dad can do it, I can do it. It's not like not no big deal, but it was like my dad practiced. I seen him read over what he needed to do. Like read his readings before he went
Yeah.
out. So let's talk a little bit about your preparation because I saw my dad prepare. When you started getting these large speaking things like the convocation as an undergrad, how did you prepare and how did you assess that you were, oh, I'm good at this, or I'm like, this was a horrible experience kind of thing?
So there's no way of me saying this without sounding like it's bragging, but I swear it's not. When I would deliver addresses, when I would do those talks, when I would do those speeches, I would have a lot of folks come up to me and say, "You're natural at that. You're a born speaker." Yeah, there's probably something to that where command of language and what have you is probably part of it, but there is a lot of preparation, and especially with a topic or a talk I'm doing for the first or the second or the third time. I obsess over some of those details, right? And I'll give you one fun story, and then when we talk about the TEDx topic in a little bit, I have others to share as well. But I remember one time a few years back when I was doing Montclair State University's commencement. I had the speech. They had sent it to me, and I'd read it probably 100 times, and I'd practiced it a couple times, and everything like that. But at the time, my son, who is now 8 and a half, almost 8 and a half, he was I think 3, and we were in the full Dr. Seuss mode, right? And one of our favorite books to read to him at bedtime was Fox and Socks. Now, anybody who's ever read Fox and Socks knows that it is a book that is a funny, nonsensical tongue twister. It is very hard to get through all of Fox and Socks without making a mistake. And about 2 weeks before I did this commencement address, I'm laying in bed with my wife and my son, and we're reading to him, which we do every night. And I realized I'm taking that book with me to commencement. And prior to getting on stage, as we're in the robing room, as they call it, and everyone's kind of getting ready, everyone's talking, I'm walking back and forth, and I've got the speech in one hand, and I've got Fox and Socks in the other. And I'm reading Fox and Socks out loud just to warm up my jaw, my vocal cords, and to get into that brain to mouth connection to be able to hit those spots effectively. It was just the strangest thing, and it was inspired by my young son and a Dr. Seuss book. So these are little preparation things that I would do behind the scenes that nobody would see, and I would get up there and I would feel more comfortable and confident. Now I kind of laugh about it, but I did that, and that was part of my prep. And research is a huge part. I like to read not only what my speech is, but I want to read the information behind it, because if I get a question, I want to be prepared. I want to be educated to address the question. So there is a lot of preparation that goes into it, no doubt about it.
So, one of my mentors told me, if you want to become a better public speaker, get reps in. And I think
Yeah.
that resonates with you as someone that's an avid gym goer. And so for me, reps were joining Toastmasters, because then I just do it over and over and over and over and over again. Beyond the Fox and Sox books and reading,
Yeah.
what is the form of reps for you of getting that routine in front of people practice?
Yeah, so the terminology I love to use is, and I'm not a huge baseball guy, but I always say at bats are the
Sure.
only way somebody becomes a great hitter is by
Yes.
stepping into the batter's box and swinging the bat. You don't get it by reading about batting. You get it by stepping into the batter's box. So yeah, there have been instances in which I've tested out some topics. I know that's something that Toastmasters is really wonderful about. As a matter of fact, I'm part of the National Speakers Association of New
Very
York
nice. Yeah.
City, and that's more, NSA is more for the business side of speaking,
Yes.
whereas
Mhm.
Toastmasters is for the development of the skill and the practice and
Mhm.
providing the safe space to try out topics and things like that. And our NSA chapter in New York City just launched a Toastmasters chapter too that runs in tandem, which is absolutely amazing. For me, a lot of that came in college, and then working with students in my talent acquisition job. There were plenty of instances in which I had these new ideas, I had these new topics that I just wanted to run by them, and so I had a good enough relationship with those colleges where they would say, "Yeah, come on in, and we'll advertise it. We'll try and get your room full of students." And I would have anywhere from 5 to 100 kids show up and listen to the talk, and then I would workshop it and kind of
Mhm.
mess with it from there. Same thing with YouTube, right? Is a lot of the topics I speak on, I post 15 to 20 minute versions of those keynotes on my YouTube channel. I I do that recording. I rewatch that. I watch it again. I take things out. I move things around, and a lot of times I cobble together pieces of those talks into larger keynotes because I already know I've spoken on them and that they work, and people will send me comments and feedback. So, and then on the feedback side, also there's a great tool I use now as a professional speaker called Talkadot. I'm not sure
Mhm.
if you're familiar with it. You've heard of it.
Yeah.
Talkadot is incredible. The founder, Arel Moody, is he's a visionary, and he supports it. But Talkadot is this way of speakers when they get to the end of their talk to solicit feedback from the audience in real time. And that feedback has been very helpful. And then also it helps us follow up, and it's lead management and everything like that. It's just a phenomenal system, but it's given me really good insight into what topics and what points are memorable and really resonate with an audience. So now, as a professional speaker who's doing this at corporations and conferences and colleges and things like that, that Talkadot feedback has been instrumental for me.
So as you developed as a speaker, when did it, beside, was it that first speaking gig where you're like, wow, someone paid me to talk? I have a quick story where
Yeah.
I remember someone said, Philip, what's your rate? And I don't know, like $50. And they offered something way more than $50. And I was like, oh my goodness, people get paid to do this? That was like, it's a hidden curriculum. I did not know about this whole world, keynote speakers and all that stuff. So when did that light bulb go off for you? That's like, yo, I get paid to do this stuff.
Yeah, well, so very similar to that story, because when the conference planner reached out to me on LinkedIn and was talking to me about this, there was that certain sense in my head where it's like, oh my, I had no idea that this was going to be what this is. So you're going to fly me to Nashville, you're going to put me up in the hotel,
Yeah.
and then I get to deliver a talk, something I'm passionate about anyway. It was a topic that was an area of expertise for me. I get to meet some really great new people. I get to attend the rest of the conference, and then I get compensated for
Yeah.
my time, which is really, really neat. But then as I started to think about it, and I realized I did a customized slide deck for that presentation.
You did
I
some work.
did research ahead of time to know what the organization was all about, who some of the attendees would be. I helped promote the conference on my social media channels and via email, so I was providing that service and that value. I I'm not one of those people who, and most of the speakers I know don't do this, but um, you know, we aren't the ones who show up and like land in the airport and then pull up 15 minutes before they take the stage and ask for the bottle of water and just kind of grab this. I get there the day before.
To
I
get to
want to
know
see the
people.
space. I want to walk the stage. One of the first things I do is I shake hands with the AV team. because they are the ones who are going to be responsible for making sure that I look and sound the way I want to look and sound on stage. They're unsung heroes of every conference and every talk I've ever done. So if you're out there and you do AV work where you mic up speakers and you get the speaker set and you make sure that the slides are working, thank you for everything you do. Absolutely, absolutely true. But all that preparation, all that time going into that, and it starts to come together for me and say, all right, so this is what it is,
It's
right?
work.
Maybe yeah, okay, I'm getting paid for the hour that I'm delivering that keynote or I'm leading that session, but really what goes into that is all the time that I'm preparing, and then I start to peel the onion back a little bit more, and I say, the reason they're paying me is because I have 20 of at the time I had 15 years of experience. Now I have 20 years of experience in this field and in these topics. They're paying me to distill my expertise.
Yeah.
Right? That's not nothing, and not everybody can do that. So that was once I started going through that thought process, that's when it translated into I could probably make this into something, and I would have done it sooner if not for the fact that I went the master's degree route, and also that happened right when COVID had. So this conference was 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started looking at and I changed jobs. And then COVID hit. I did my master's online. We recovered from COVID, and I was off to the races.
But it's more so like understanding, your intellectual capital, meaning like you have a resource, which is your intellect, your expertise, and now you're leveraging it and saying, I'm not giving out my intellectual capital for free, and people don't understand. It's like a hidden curriculum that we're not really taught to value or leverage our intellectual capital as much as our labor. And what I mean
Yep.
by that is that, like, you go to college, you graduate, you go to get a job, and you work, and that's how you earn a living through a wage, through work. But we also don't understand, like, as we consume information or expertise, that is something that we could provide value to other people.
Yep.
And that when we provide that value, not saying we should be or need to be compensated, but it is a value. It's worth something to your, it's worth it, right? Like your years of experience is worth something. And so how did you have some guidance on how to, be confident in that and say, yeah, I'm providing, this prep time, I'm providing this. This is a value add, that I do, I'd like to be compensated for.
It's interesting, and and funny, if I go back to, I keep bringing this back to my experience in church, but I remember that there was a celebrant the first person who would ever mention to me the concept of time, talent, and treasure.
Yeah.
Right. And it was part of a larger lesson about stewardship and how we give of ourselves in the world. But when I applied that to what I think of how I bring value and what makes me somebody who's hireable, I mean, it's easy for us to quantify our treasure, right? I donate X number of dollars
Yes.
here.
Mm-hmm.
I spend X number of dollars. I have a budget for this. And then we pull our calendar up, and we're able to do the same thing with our time. We're able to quantify our time.
Yeah.
I have
Yes.
24 hours in a day. I have 7 days in a week. I spend X number working, X number family and related. I have this much free time. How am I going to spend those hours that I have that full control over, that I haven't already allocated? Because really, we have full control over every hour of our day, but we've decided how to budget it. We don't necessarily do that with our talent, because it's harder to quantify our talent than it is our time and our treasure, because those are inherently numerical values, time and treasure, whereas talent is abstract.
Mm-hmm.
It is this concept that when we start thinking about it as an asset, right? I have this skill, I have this talent. Then we start thinking about it in terms of, all right, so how does it play into a transaction? Now, the beautiful thing about being a professional speaker and being somebody who can be compensated as a speaker is the fact that we also still have the power to say, there are instances in which I will give this away for free if it's a cause that I really believe in, or if it's like when I do Montclair State's commencement, like that's something I do as part of my role as an active alumnus and as an evangelist for the university, right? That's just part of it. But like my intellectual property, my presentations, the decks that I create and all that information, that I want to make sure I monetize. I keep that within that kind of section, that kind of area, because because it's my intellectual property, right?
Mhm.
So we have the power to do that and to make those decisions, just like we have over our talent. I'm sorry, over our time and our treasure.
Yeah.
That's what's really. And once I started thinking about it along those lines, and I remember there was a social media post I saw. It was a photographer, and it was right around the time when you started seeing the tide turn toward the acceptance of the gig economy,
Yes.
where photographers were fed up with being asked to
Two free
photograph
headshots.
somebody's
Yeah.
wedding
Yeah.
and say, well, you'll get exposure. Like, think of all the exposure you'll get to 200 guests. And that was the customer's way of saying, you should want to do this for free for us. And this particular photographer had asked, so if a plumber came over to your house and fixed a pipe, would you say, hey, I don't think I should have to pay you for that, because think of the exposure you'll get when I tell everybody what a great job you did with the pipe? No, you brought your talent here, you brought
Yeah.
your experience here, you did the work, you did the labor. Why didn't we think about that the same way we thought? Why don't we think about photography the same way we think about plumbing?
Mhm.
And why don't we think about speaking the same way we think about all
Yeah.
these other things that are just, this is my trade, this is what I do, this is part of my identity.
I love that. And so I'm going to use that.
Sure.
So we're going to jump for TEDx. You did one.
Oh,
We did one. You said that was a goal. That was a goal. My goal. Go back to your origin story. I want to hear your origin story when you was like, I want to do this.
yep. And again, funny enough, how you and I mirror each other. I remember you and I had publicized the goal and
Yeah.
the desire of wanting to be TEDx speakers around the same time.
Yes.
And there was mutual support there. And then lo and behold, just before I found out that I was accepted for my TEDx, I seen that you had done yours. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like our paths are so linked here, which is so super cool. So TEDx was something that got onto my radar less than 2 years ago.
Okay.
I had read the book Talk Like TED from the founder of TEDx, the founder of TED Talks, rather. And it was such a good book. And I read the book because I wanted the lessons of the TEDx world for what I was doing with building my speaking business. But the
Mhm.
more I went through this book and the more I thought about how powerful that experience was, the more it piqued my interest. So April of 2024, I put in an application, I think, for TEDx Asbury Park. It was my first application. I didn't really know what I was doing,
Yeah.
but I put an application in anyway. I wanted to learn more about it. I wasn't selected, but I wanted to go. So I bought a front row VIP ticket. I was literally front row center. When you watch the videos on YouTube of the speakers, you can actually see my bright yellow Skechers sneakers in the frame. Right, it's kind of the only way you can recognize anyone in the crowd. But I hear these speakers, and I was inspired by every single one of them. It was an incredible production. The TEDx Asbury Park team nailed it. They had great music. It was a really cool location. It was Bell Labs, which was a phenomenal spot. But the speakers were incredible. I connected with them, and they became mentors for me. Now, anybody who knows me well personally knows that growing up, and even to this day, I'm not ashamed to say it, I am a professional wrestling fan, right? I've been a pro wrestling fan for a long time. And there's this tradition as they head toward the biggest night in professional wrestling is the night that you see WrestleMania. And in the setup to WrestleMania, there's this prior event in which somebody who's going to be in the main event of WrestleMania looks at the sign that's high above the arena, above the crowd, and they point to it. They don't say anything. They just point to the sign. And it is this realizing and manifesting what the next big step is. Like, I am going there. I am going to be there. Right.
Mhm.
And it's a cool moment. And so at TEDx Asbury Park, before the event got started, and I felt the energy in that room and everything like that, I took a selfie of myself pointing at the TEDx sign. And I posted it on my socials, and I said, that's my WrestleMania. I'm going to be there. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And it was less than a year to the day from that moment where I pointed at that sign to where I got the email from TEDxMontclair I mentioned my connections to the city of Montclair. I funny enough, got my TEDx speaking opportunity with TEDxMontclair, and I just did that. Gosh, what, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yours is a smoother version. Mine started like I tried to get on TEDx in like 2019 before the pandemic. It was the reason why I even went to Toastmasters. So,
Oh well,
you know, hey, our journeys,
that's cool.
similar and different at the same time, but both showed resilience.
That's right.
Did you? Okay, I love this part that you did too, and I think I did the same thing. Is that when you did not get accepted by the first one, or like selected, whatever, that you still use it as a growth opportunity to connect and learn. And I did the same thing, always ask for feedback and stuff.
Yep.
So what was some of the things you learned, the feedback that you gained when you connected with some of those organizers
Yeah.
from Ashbury Park? Because that shows resilience, right? Where you take something that's like, could be a little bit disappointing, which we all understand, but you turn it into like, this is something I learned. It's part of your journey. It's a great part of your story.
Yeah, and I will say this: even getting the notifications that I wasn't selected, I think I put in 4 applications for TEDx's,
Yeah.
and I had an audition to another one down in North Carolina prior to
Yeah.
that. In fact, I think you and I auditioned for the same one, Mint Street.
I think we did. Yeah,
We
I think
did.
we did.
I remember seeing that, and I remember thinking to myself, we auditioned for the same TEDx in North Carolina. That's so cool. And they did a
Was it the Charlotte one?
phenomenal.
The Charlotte one? The
Right
one in
outside,
Charlotte?
right outside. Mint Street is right outside that area, like Charlotte or
Yeah,
Evansville,
yeah,
right around that
yeah,
area.
yeah,
Because I think you
yeah.
posted about it, and I'd seen
We
that.
did the same one. It's the same one.
And that audition process was great because I got real time feedback. It was almost like I was presenting a dish on Chopped, where I was getting that real
Me
time
too.
feedback, and that was very helpful. They didn't end up selecting me, but that feedback that I got during the audition was super helpful. I also, in my connection with the National Speakers Association, there are several folks in NSA who had delivered TEDx's, and I connected with them, and they were so generous with their time and with their mentorship and their advice. One gentleman in particular I connected with, his name is Scott Mason. He's an incredible speaker. He talks about modern leadership lessons from ancient mythology. It's such a neat approach to the talk, and he is just one of the kindest souls I've met. And he set up time to have a call with me and told me a little bit about what to expect. I would say some of the bigger lessons I learned throughout the process, though, is I had to get out of my head as thinking of myself as a professional speaker, because that's one of the things that they say with TED and with TEDx is that they almost tend to shy away from professional speakers because what they don't want
Mm,
is a speaker who just wants to do their keynote on the TEDx stage and try and get exposure. So I had to separate that part of my identity and this is what I got from the book also, and focus on the formulation of an idea
that's
and how
real.
my experience and my expertise, not necessarily as a professional speaker, but as a human resources leader, as a talent acquisition professional, as a learning and development professional, as a diversity and inclusion practitioner, any of those things that would take an idea and help me spread it. So when TEDx Montclair was announced, and I read the premise and the theme, which was domino effect. And for anybody who's watching the video, I keep I can't really see it because it's too bright, but I keep a TEDx Montclair domino as a good luck charm now. But the whole idea of it only takes one, and when one domino falls, it can set off this incredible chain reaction. And when I sat and I really marinated with that and I thought about that, it reminded me of an interview story that I had done many, many years ago, 2 employers ago. Now, I mentioned earlier, Phil, that I've interviewed somewhere between 40 and 70,000 job seekers, right? Estimated. In that time, I have ended up with 4 or 5 of those job seekers who have cried in my interview, right? Not because I'm a jerk or anything, not because I'm tough or anything like that, but just because we brought it either they were very anxious and it was kind of overcome by it, or they brought up a topic that was very powerful to them in our discussion. But in all of that time, only one of those interviewees ever returned that favor. And I remembered this interview with this young woman who had struggled making the transition from high school to college. She didn't have mentors growing up. She was from a socioeconomically disadvantaged background. She'd gotten into college through a combination of strong academics in high school, some extracurricular activities, and she was also working with the EOF program, Educational Opportunity Fund, which is huge in New Jersey state schools. It's really phenomenal program. And her initial semester in college was not good. She really struggled out of the gate. And she was on the precipice of dropping out and giving up on this dream. And a mentor appeared at just the right time, an advisor that she was telling that she was going to drop out. She went to her EOF advisor, and the advisor got her to give it one more shot and give him time to mentor her and work with her. And she turned the whole thing around. So my TEDx experience was I told the story of mentorship through the eyes of the young woman I was interviewing, and how powerful her story was. That it was the only time in an interview that I needed to reach for the box of tissues on my desk to blow my to wipe my eyes. Right? Usually it's there. Somebody can either blow their nose or discard chewing gum. But it was the one time I actually needed it to dry my eyes. And so getting to that point from reading the theme of TEDxMontclair, that took me about a half hour. That's how clearly the theme spoke to me. And I stopped thinking about, I want to deliver this keynote, I want to talk about this topic. And it started being about, do I have an idea that resonates with this theme? And I did. And that story came to me at the right moment. And that was, and the rest was history.
Yeah, I think I agree with the same thing. I think, now that I hear your story, I remember it's like all these times I was getting ready, it was like, didn't they see how much hard work I put in to be a better public speaker?
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't the idea. And now when I look at it stoically, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I could probably talk in, ums and ahs and cut all that out and be very polished, but that wasn't what they were looking for. They were looking for the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the feedback. And it was okay because inadvertently I got better with an idea and my public speaking along the process of all that feedback. And so I really think about that journey. So I think I definitely want to get you on time. So we're going to jump to a segment called a shot for shot.
Okay.
It's where you get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first or I go first?
I'll go first.
All right. What's your random question for me?
If you could go back in time to before you submitted your first application for a TEDx, what's the one piece of advice you would give yourself in that moment?
Oh, the first one. Wow. Back in 19.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think I would have told myself back in 19 that, I don't know, I think I would have not told not to change. I think I would have just mentally prepared myself and said, hey, you're really going to get this done, and I don't want to spoil it for you when it's going to get done, as future me, right? Yeah. But I want to let you know that you're not going to get this one and keep trying. And because I don't want to change the journey at all, but I want to just give myself a little bit more of a push to say just be a little bit more okay with rejection at the initial part.
It's like an Avengers Endgame when Doctor Strange says to Tony Stark, if I tell you what happens, it won't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And also understanding that same movie, he did all the scenarios where, you're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot. He failed a million times. I can't tell you the one time we did not fail because then it'll ruin it. And I kind of want to have that same mindset. I just want to give myself the heads up. You're going to fail a lot, but it's going to work out. I just can't tell you the situation when it works out because I don't want to jinx it.
I love
that. That's what I would just say to myself. And keep trying and keep doing. I think the techniques that you did too was keep reaching out to people and getting feedback. I made an Excel spreadsheet. I think I sent it to you. I'll send it to you.
You did.
I made an Excel spreadsheet of all the people I knew that did TEDx's, not to compare myself, but to say, hey, these are my friends. I watched all their talks, and I was it was almost like process by osmosis. If I just surround myself with people that did it and ask them how they did it, then maybe I can do it too. So these are things I would have just told myself, maybe tighten up your processes, but you're going to get it done. That's what I would have told myself.
I love it.
All right. You said WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So if you were a wrestler, would you be a heel or a good guy? And what would be your stick?
What would be my shtick, huh? I think about this fairly frequently. Um, the one thing I've learned about watching and speaking with enough professional wrestlers, having been a fan for a long time, is that you probably are going to need to be both at some point. You have to play different characters, and if only just to not get bored. So I would probably have to prepare myself to be able to play either one. I think I would be a much better babyface. I think inherently that's how I am. Not that I can't talk smack, and not that I can't play either the arrogant or the cowardly heel. I probably could. But I think of myself as the underdog babyface, where I am the Rey Mysterio type, where it's I'm undersized, or I'm underestimated, and I overcome the odds, or like a Daniel Bryan from Bryan Danielson from a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that stems from kind of my history and my childhood, right? So I was throughout middle school and high school, I was one of the worst things that you could be as a middle school and high school student in the 1990s, and that was incredibly overweight. And so sophomore year of high school, I weighed 235 pounds, and I didn't have an ounce of muscle on me. Right. So I was the target of a lot of bullying and a lot of harsh comments, and dreading going to school. And then sophomore year of high school, for some reason that I don't quite recall, I decided to go out for the high school wrestling team. And 2 days in, I was ready to quit because it was very, very hard, and I was not physically able to handle it. I had a coach and a mentor, Coach Greenshields, who kept me in it. And similar to that interviewee I mentioned earlier, said, give it one more day, and kept saying, just give it one more day, hang in there. You're getting better. You're improving. And I started seeing changes. I started noticing adjustments and things like that. And by junior year, I was going into a spring tournament, off-season tournament, and I weighed in at 159 and 3/4 pounds.
Jeez.
So I lost just over 75 pounds in about a year in high school, year and a half in high school, because I went out for the wrestling team, absolutely underestimated. And I went from a C student to a straight A student. How I got into college was because I was able to make that turnaround. I think that's also why Simone, the young lady I interviewed, that's why her story resonated with me. But nobody expected me to stick that out. They figured out he'll be here for a week and then he'll be done. Like I was Private Pile in Full Metal Jacket. It was bad, right?
Yeah. No
But
soapbox though.
but I overcame it, right? And
Mhm.
and so that's my story. That's what shapes me today. So that underdog story, kind of baby face, that would be my pro wrestling shtick, I think.
I like it. I don't know what mine be. I think mine be just comedic. And just like, why am I here? I don't think I'd be a wrestler. I think I'd be like the guy that's like the hype man, like Paul Bearer, and just hype other
Okay,
people up.
you'd be the manager or the valet or
Yeah,
something like that.
just hype other people out to get beat up and then cheat. I cheat a lot. I think
So
that'd
you'd
be
be the
my
heel.
thing. Yeah, I'd be a heel. Just come out of nowhere and say my man's gonna beat you, and then cheat.
Hmm.
Like I feel
Love
like
it.
it'd be funny. Just the instigator.
Like Leo Rush, or that guy that follows Logan Paul around.
Yeah.
So
So this is the part of the show called shout outs and plugs. You get to shout out, show love to anyone you want to show love to, and then plugs. These are things that I'll make sure to put in the show notes,
cool.
follow up, so people can stay engaged with you and the things you're doing. So shout outs and plugs.
So for anybody, if you've noticed, I've not so subtly already gotten some shout outs in throughout the course of this. So let's see, I've shouted out the National Speakers Association of New York City, an incredible community of people. And also, it's a New York City based organization with strong New Jersey roots, but I think like 10 people from the chapter came out to my TEDx. And I felt so supported. I'm still grateful. I'm still overcome by how it feels to have had them come out and be a part of that journey for me. I'm just so grateful. And some of the folks in that organization who were absolutely incredible. Like we were advised by a speaker named Kate Donovan. She became the TEDxMontclair advisor and coach in many ways, and she does also a phenomenal podcast called Fried. It's about burnout, and she's an incredible human being. I talked about Scott Mason, who's a great follow. Coach Anna Joe. There's so many great people there. We talked about Toastmasters already. I shouted out Talkadot and I plugged Talkadot to riff if you're a professional speaker. That's a great organization as well. And as far as the plugs, I think the thing that I would plug is just if this story or this experience or anything like this resonates with you, I just would love to be connected with you. So if you're listening, and I know you have a lot of really terrific listeners because I've been following the podcast for, gosh, over a year now, probably longer than that. Find me on LinkedIn. Find me on Instagram at Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks, but definitely find me on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and search Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks, you can see some of those short form talks and see some of my content. And then also that's how once my TEDx gets posted on the YouTube channel for TEDx, I'll be able to share that link and give everyone a chance to hear Simone's story and hear that larger story of mentorship. So yeah, please connect with me. If you're listening to Phil and you love his positivity, Phil and I are cut from a similar cloth, and this is why we've been supporting each other now for half a decade, and we've become very good friends despite the fact that we've never occupied the same space at the same time, which we have to remedy.
It'll happen one day.
It's going to be great when it does.
Yeah, like it'll be like Dylan, like Predator.
It'll be our own mega powers explode. It's going to be Hogan and Savage. It's going to be great.
All right. Well, Positive Philter listeners, has been a great episode. As you know, every episode is dedicated to the memory of my father-in-law, Jeff Kirsch. So please consider donating to the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund for all his work fighting food insecurity. Also, if you're a Mason patriot, please consider submitting a Pats for Patriots to increase kindness to other people. This has been a great episode. Like, subscribe, share, and have a great day.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.